Okay, I want everyone to just wait just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. I'm going to be with you in 1 minute. Just a little. Here we go. Give me just a minute. Hope everyone's enjoying their Saturday evening. And if you're listening, thank you so much for doing so. I know everyone has a whole lot to do. And for taking the time to listen, I appreciate it so much. Now let's test this. Okay, now we're ready. I'm gonna test this out on you. Y'all ready? Now keep in mind that I'm a hostess and I'm sensitive about my sisters. How y'all doing? Brothers, y'all all right? Okay. It's Saturday. I've been listening to Erykah Badu. Again, thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk on Indie TV. Take a moment to share, and share. Tonight, I am so excited to have as my guest, Charles Woods. Mr. Woods is an educator and leader in the field of education, but his journey to the top is riveting. His story can inspire all and is an example of Black excellence. I want to focus on Black excellence on the show. If you have a story or know of a story about Black excellence, let me know. I'd love to highlight it. As a community, we need to uplift, empower, and motivate. I always start my show off with a scripture. And for today, it's going to be from 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 7. And it goes, "But since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you, see that you also excel in this grace of giving." So what does that scripture mean? In this scripture, Paul praises the Corinthians specifically for the areas of excellence he sees among them. He saw excellence in faith and speech and knowledge and enthusiasm. In other words, they are doing so many things well that Paul hopes they will also show excellence in the act of giving graciously to meet the needs of others. In this segment, I celebrate Black excellence. And my special guest, Mr. Woods, is not only an example of Black excellence, but as the scripture says, he's sharing it with the world through education. And now we're going to go to the news you can use. We have a lot of news going on, but I'm going to keep it kind of brief because I really want to start talking with Mr. Woods, and so you can listen to his story. But the first story on the news you can use is fresh off the press. The Department of Education canceled an additional $55.6 million in student loan debt for 1,800 students who were victims of a for-profit college fraud, bringing the total amount of canceled student loan debt by the Biden administration to $1.5 billion. Today's announcement continues the U.S. Department of Education's commitment to standing up for students who colleges took advantage of them. The latest loan cancellation is for students who attended Westwood College, Maranello Schools of Beauty, and the Court Reporting Institute. This is the first time the department approved loan forgiveness to students who attended schools other than Corinthian colleges, ITT Technical Institute, and American Career Institute since 2017. Let's hope he continues doing this and continue canceling those loans. Zaila Avantgarde doesn't know much about stress, but now she has become the first African-American winner in the 96-year history of the Scripps National Spelling Bee. The 14-year-old basketball prodigy from Harvey, Louisiana, breezed to the championship on Thursday night. The only previous Black winner was also the only champ from outside the United States, Jody Ann Maxwell of Jamaica in 1998. Zaila said she was fully aware that people were watching her and dreaming of following in her footsteps. Zaila was described spelling as a side hobby, although she routinely practiced for 7 hours a day. That's excellence, practicing 7 hours a day. She's also a basketball standout who hopes to play someday in the WNBA and hold 3 Guinness World Records for dribbling multiple balls simultaneously. Again, a great example of Black excellence. Biden sends strike force to Chicago to help curb spike in violent crime. The Justice Department announced new strike forces in June, which are designed to curb violence in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. by helping city leaders crack down on illegal gun trafficking. This action is welcome, particularly after the violent 4th of July weekend here in Chicago, where we saw 108 people shot, 17 fatally. Chicago, we're in a state of emergency, and we should see it as a priority. This epidemic of violence continues to destroy families and communities in Chicago. We need a cultural paradigm shift. We just can't take this and just accept it week after week. Why is it culturally appropriate for every warm weekend or every holiday? We know the numbers are going to spike. This has got to stop. The president of Haiti was killed in his home. Jeez. A group of gunmen broke into the homes of President Jovenel Moise and shot the president 12 times. Mr. Moise was found lying on his back, his shirt soaked in blood, with his left eye gouged out. He had bullet wounds to his forehead and several to his torso. He died at the scene. The First Lady, Martine Moise, was also shot but survived. She's been airlifted to Florida and is said to be currently in stable condition. The couple's adult daughter, Jo Marlee Moise, hid in her brother's bedroom and was unhurt. She and her two brothers are in a safe location. The perpetrators arrived in white SUVs dressed in black. They identified themselves as US DEA operatives and told everyone to stay down. They ransacked Mr. Moise's office and took a checkbook in the couple's names, as well as the servers that held the surveillance camera footage for the residents. The two top security officials in charge of Mr. Moise's safety are under investigation and have been summoned to appear at a hearing scheduled for July 13th and 14th. It looks like there's some questions about the top security. Maybe there was collusion, maybe something was going on, but they're checking them out. Suzanne Douglas has passed. She is best known for her television role with Robert Townsend in Parenthood. Other television credits include The Good Wife, CBS Bulls, Bones, and Law & Order SVU. Her film career includes How Stella Got Her Groove Back, School of Rock, Inkwell, Jason's Lyric, Tap, and the remake of Sounder. Suzanne's vocal talents have taken her from Broadway to the concert halls of Russia. She was a talented singer and composer. She earned a bachelor's degree from Illinois State and a master's in music from the Manhattan School of Music. She is a lifetime member of Girl Scouts of America, the National Council of Negro Women, Jack and Jill of America, and Delta Sigma Theta sorority. What an accomplished lady. She exemplified Black excellence and will certainly be missed. Track and field superstar Sha'Carri Richardson will not debut as an Olympic athlete this year. On Tuesday, USA Track and Field released the official U.S. Olympic team roster for this year's Tokyo Summer Olympic Games. Richardson's name was not included on the list for the 4x100 relay, the only race in which she could have been eligible to compete since testing positive for THC, a chemical compound contained in marijuana. Richardson broke records last month with her 10.86 second time in the women's 100-meter race at the U.S. Olympic Track and Field Trials in Oregon, marking her the fastest living track and field female athlete in America. Though due to her failed drug tests administered by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, she was placed on a month-long provisional suspension from competition, valid as of June 28th, officially risking the nullification of her Olympic qualifying stats from the Oregon Trails, as well as those of any subsequent races in Tokyo, should she have been officially named on the roster. Now, I've been hearing a lot of rumbling about this in comparison with her and Phelps when Phelps was suspended. Keep in mind, when Phelps was suspended, he wasn't suspended for being tested. He was suspended for being in a picture where he was smoking pot or something. And because they saw that picture, which was in off season, he was suspended for 3 months. She was suspended appropriately for 1 month, and they didn't want her back to compete in the relay. A lot of people think this was being harsh. Look at it this way. If you had a job and if your job told you that they did random drug tests and if you're caught with anything in your system, including marijuana, you would be suspended or fired. You would expect that. So I think she really womaned up when she came on the interview on ABC, and I respect her for that. The good thing about making a mistake, and we all do, is that we learn from those lessons. She even said, I'm only 21. I have a lot of living and a lot of running to do. And I know she's learned the lesson, and I also know she'll be back. A loan forgiveness program for Black farmers written into President Joe Biden's American Rescue Plan in March has been put on hold by a federal judge who wrote the program is discriminatory. The program set aside $4 billion in funds to forgive some agricultural debt for farmers of color, as well as create grants, training, and educational opportunities. However, Judge Marsha Morales Howard of the Middle District Court of Florida ruled in favor of a lawsuit filed by a white farmer named Scott Wynn, who alleged that he has loan debt and also experienced hardship during the pandemic. Howard wrote that it appears that in adopting Section 1005 strict race-based debt relief remedy, Congress moved with great speed to address the history of discrimination, but did not move with great care. And I agree with that. How did they move with great care? Did they think nobody would challenge that? The Suffolk County District Attorney's Office has revealed the racist ideology held by a man that killed 2 Black people in Massachusetts, saying he was fueled by hate. The murder of Ramona Cooper, an Air Force veteran, and David Green, a retired Black state trooper, occurred last month in Winthrop, where Nathan Allen, 28, shot the pair in an unprovoked attack on June 26. Allen was then shot dead by police. In a statement made by Rachel Rollins, a Suffolk County District Attorney, she said that as well as his weapons, a 9mm caliber semi-automatic pistol and a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol, he also carried hate fueled by white supremacy. State police investigating Allen uncovered white supremacist literature in his home, including diaries written by Allen. One notebook contained the following: white people are the world's apex predators. Whites in the USA are waking up. Blacks are effing losers, all of them. They know they are inferior to us, etc., and so on. In short, in summary, he was a white supremacist, unprovoked. He killed 2 Black people. Disgusting. A suburban Northbrook family says they're devastated after their 18-year-old son, a standout football player who was awarded a full-ride scholarship, was fatally shot while visiting relatives in Chicago. Miles Thompson was found shot to death early Thursday on the city's west side, just one day before celebrating his birthday. Thompson, a graduate of Glenbrook North High School, was an all-conference defensive MVP who excelled on and off the field. The 18-year-old achieved a full ride to St. Ambrose University in Davenport, Iowa. He had started his own trucking and logistics business and started his own LLC, said Thompson's stepfather, Michael Cooper. He was ready to take life by the horns. Family members told NBC5 that Thompson drove to the city Austin neighborhood Wednesday night to visit his father. He had just parked his car in an alley behind his father's house when, according to a family, a group of men jumped out and shot him. You know, this wasn't about money. This wasn't about taking his car, because they took nothing. The teenage 9-year-old brother made the heartbreaking discovery Thursday morning. He saw him out the window and was wondering why his brother was laying outside on the ground. He went out to investigate, and he saw the worst that he could possibly imagine. As the suburban teen's family expresses their grief and mourns the loss of their loved one, Chicago activists and community leaders continue to demand an end to gun violence. We need a cultural paradigm shift. This has got to stop. And that's the news you can use on Let's Talk Indie TV. Now I'm really excited because I'm about to introduce my special guest. Let me read his bio as he comes on. Charles Woods has served students, parents, educators, and communities through his educational career for over 17 years. During this time of teaching and administrative experiences, he has done so with data-proven track record of student success, staff development, and educational program implementation. Mr. Woods has served as head of schools, founding principal, dean of students, physical education teacher, and a special education teacher. Mr. Woods has extensive knowledge pertaining to best practices for zero-tolerance bullying, safety concepts and facility development, gang intervention, nonviolent crisis intervention methods, and trauma-informed practices. His accolades include Teacher of the Year an Outstanding Educator Award from the state of Indiana, Distinguished Alumni from his alma mater, and an Open Door Award from the American Heart Association. Mr. Woods is exhilarated to serve students and communities through his gift of educational leadership. He is confident that his uncompromising belief that all students can learn, grow, and exceed their own expectations will establish a nurturing, student-first community. Mr. Woods graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Physical Education and a certification in Special Education. He also holds a Master of Education in Curriculum and Instruction and a Master of Education in Administrative Leadership. Help me welcome to Let's Talk NDTV, Mr. Charles Woods, an example of Black excellence. Welcome, Mr. Woods.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love hearing my bio read because I'm like, who is she talking about?
It's like, who is that?
Who is that? But I guess it's me. So thankful for you to have me on today, Janice. Thanks so much.
You've done a whole lot. I mean, just a whole lot. Wow. Let's just start out. You have so much vast teaching experience. You're a leader in education. You know how you know those kids in middle school that always wanted to be a teacher? Were you one of those kids that always wanted to be a teacher?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. My mom, when I was a principal in Indianapolis, she used to come to my school when she'd visit. She'd come to my principal's office. She'd say, you should know how to be a principal as much trouble as you got into, as much time you spent in the principal's office. So I was definitely not that kid. I don't come from a family of educators. I was in high school. I encountered an amazing educator, Mr. Mark West, who changed the trajectory of my life and opened my eyes to the field of teaching and education. So definitely wasn't that kid that always wanted to be a teacher.
You know, and I just kind of figured that you probably were because you've done so much in education. That kind of surprises me. Okay. So tell me something about your background. So where did you grow up? Where are you from?
Born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, Naptown as we call it. I'm a Hoosier through and through. Still love my Pacers, still love my Colts. I grew up kind of all over the city. I attended quite a few schools. I believe the last time I counted from kindergarten to sixth grade, I believe it was 10 different schools or 10 different places within those schools. Grew up in Indy, born and raised there. All my family's there. Went to Arsenal Tech High School, so I'm a proud Tech Titan. And then went on to college on an academic scholarship, which in that avenue, never even knew what a scholarship was, didn't know what financial aid was, didn't know about anything, didn't understand the value of that scholarship until probably about my junior year. Oh, when my friend explained to me that when we graduated, we didn't owe anyone any money. So that was eye-opening to me. Worked in Indy, started out as a PE teacher and a special education teacher. Then met my beautiful wife. I can't leave that part out. Met my beautiful wife. And then that's when life really changed. And I think the trajectory towards leadership came into the picture. And so taught for some years, taught for about 8 years. Then I became an assistant principal or dean of students there in Indianapolis. Did that for about 1.5 years. Took over my first school as principal when I was 32 years old.
Where at? Which school?
It was an elementary school in Indianapolis, Indiana, Brookview Elementary.
Okay.
So on the far east side of Indy.
Okay.
And then my wife has always called Indianapolis Gotham City. So we've always wanted to relocate. And then an opportunity came open in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. We ended up moving to Little Rock, Arkansas, where I was the founding principal of a charter school in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So opened up a charter school down there. That was my first venture into charter schools. And then God had something else for me. A job that I had applied for before we moved to Arkansas. They reached out and we moved to Phoenix. Worked that job for about a year. It was kind of like, I honestly believe it was a placeholder position for the current position that I'm in, which is the head of schools, which is more people recognize that as a superintendent of schools. So,
wow.
Quick years there.
Wow. And you started off in the principal's office. Okay.
Yeah, I spent a little bit of time there, a little bit. I was misunderstood.
Since you mentioned that, have you had any personal challenges getting to this point? It just sounds like, doors were just open. You just walked on through. Did you have any personal challenges?
I did. When I started teaching, I remember actually talking to my grandfather because I was graduated from Indianapolis Public Schools, and I wanted to go back and teach in Indianapolis Public Schools because it was what I knew. Growing up, the township schools were what we thought were the more affluent schools. And so when I got a job in a township, in Warren Township, you know, my grandfather told me that kids of color need you no matter where you are. I was under the perception that there were, you know, the greater need was in the Indianapolis Public Schools, but God had other plans. You know, that scripture, Jeremiah 29:11, I know the plans I have for you. And from that moment, I've tried to be obedient to those plans. And I mentioned my wife because she's probably the most critical point to making sure that I'm adhering to what he has for me and what he has for our family. So there were some challenges along the way. You know, when I took over Brookview, I hired my dean of students. We were the first Black male administration team that the township had ever seen. And so, you know, we knew that there was a challenge ahead of us, but in our time there, we went from the letter grade of a D to a B school. And then Greg moved on and he became the principal of his own school. So there were some challenges along the way, especially being, you know, a young 32 when I took over my first principalship. Because there were teachers who had been teaching longer than I had been living. So that was a very unique dynamic.
What do you like most about teaching?
The kids.
Oh, really?
I love the kids. I love the aha moments. When I was a principal, I knew every kid by name in my school. You know, because for me, that added to that level of personal piece when you're talking to parents. When I could say, hey, I was just in Genesis class, ask her about the math problem she worked on the board. And so, you know, I love the kids because for so many of them, I saw myself in so many of them. You know, we didn't have everything growing up, but there was always a hunger for more and a hunger for education. And, you know, I firmly believe that education is the tool to help someone see the world. And so it's the one thing no one can take away from our kids. So seeing that light bulb moment happen for them is just, to me, that's what it's all about.
Wow. Do you think there's a difference? You kind of mentioned that you were in charter schools, but you started out in the public school system. Is there a difference in those two systems, do you think?
There is a difference. You know, I remember when I tell my story about gravitating to the charter world because when I was in public schools in Indiana, traditional public schools, because charters are public schools as well, I had the wrong mentality. You know, I wasn't fully educated on charter schools till I watched a movie called Waiting on Superman, and it changed my perspective on charter schools. So there are differences, but what I do love about the charter world is we're providing an alternative, specifically when there are schools in certain areas that mainly impact our brown and Black kids that are underserving our kids. So our kids aren't getting the best. So charters provide that different opportunity. And what I love most about charter and choice, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, if you're in a room speaking to people and you ask everybody to raise their hand and who drives a Ford, who drives a Audi, who drives a Chevy, everybody's going to raise their hand at different points. You choose your car. Why can't parents choose where they send their child to be educated? Every kid is different. And, you know, even with us, my wife, we have 2 kids. They're night and day when it comes to school. So parents should have a choice about what works best for their kid and their family and not be obligated to just what's within the confinements of their neighborhood.
What do you feel is the biggest challenge facing today's education system, particularly with this blend of, you know, public schools and charter schools and they're competing, at least in Chicago they are.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest challenge is?
I think the biggest challenge right now facing all of us is how do we bounce back from what just happened? I mean, we're saying we're going into a regular year, but, you know, even where I'm currently at, I'm constantly telling my staff and my teachers and my principals, like, it's not a regular year. Because what was regular hasn't happened. This is the first year that we're going to get a new baseline for what's regular. So I think trying to bounce back and close, as I tag it, I don't even call it the achievement gap anymore. It's an achievement canyon. Like the gap is so huge now because of what our kids lost on. And when you're looking at what we're facing, tied into that biggest challenge is our teachers shifting. Because we lost a lot of great educators during the pandemic because they were veterans that realized maybe they didn't want to do this anymore. And so you have a lot of young teachers who are going to be missing that veteran leadership within their schools. But the challenge is it's unlike anything I've seen in my 17 years in this profession.
Are you guys back in school? Have you started going back yet?
We go back August 4th, so not too
full time. Really?
Yeah, so where I'm at currently now is the head of school for a virtual school. So we serve about 9,000 kids in Arizona, all online. So it didn't really impact our schools, but the schools here in Arizona are open. The CDC just released information a couple of days ago saying, that if teachers are vaccinated and kids are vaccinated, they can go without masks. And so schools are opening this year, that's for sure.
Did you lose teachers because of the pandemic, because they thought it was too risky to go back or to even be involved with teaching anymore?
I did. At the time of the pandemic, I actually opened up the charter school that God moved me here to open. And I lost some teachers for that, and I couldn't do anything but respect it. Whether they had loved ones at home that they were taking care of, or just the stress and the pressure. It was a very stressful time. I remember when, every day leaving, going to work, and my family was at home, and, knowing I'm gonna be around 800 kids or, 60 adults, and, we're all wearing masks, but I come home, the inclination is to hug your family. It's, stop at the door, go straight upstairs, sanitize yourself, put the clothes in the washer. So I did lose some teachers, by choice. And then sadly, when I took over my current position, we unfortunately lost a few teachers to the pandemic, to the virus. And so lost them from kind of both ends. But yeah, there were people who just realized that this wasn't what they wanted right now in their lives.
What is the greatest success you've had personally with teaching?
Oh, wow. I've never been asked that question.
Good.
I would say that it's been the inspiration, the ability to be able to inspire future generations and not just kids. I'm excited about a lot of the leaders that I've had a hand in growing. I think back when I first took over my first school, I will never forget it, 2 4th grade boys. I just took over the school right after spring break, so that was a challenge within itself.
Yeah.
2 boys were walking back to class, and they were talking. It was two little black boys, and they were talking to each other. And they was like, "We've never had a black principal." It's like, "I've never seen a black principal." So it was those moments to know that, I've been able to influence and impact lives of every ethnicity, whether it's children, some of those tough conversations with parents, tough conversations with community members, bridging community gaps, bringing families back together, but most of all, just instilling an ideology that there is something to hope for. And that's in both teachers and kids. Because, when I took over my school in Indy, it was a turnaround situation. The school was failing, staff morale was down. And so I think the greatest accomplishment has been just inspiring those that God has allowed me to interact with and humbly say that I had a piece in their life at some point.
Wow. That's nice. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing Black students today? Or do you think it's any different? Do you think they have the same challenges as the little white students? Do you think they're all the same?
I think the challenge is, I'm a Black man in America, and that's something I don't hide from. It's a different challenge, especially now with social justice being more prevalent. We've talked to our own kids that they have more knowledge and more impact than previous generations have had, as it should be with every generation. But I think now, I'm watching the TV show The Chi, right? And so, I'm seeing how, one is struggling to support the cause and the other is supporting the cause. So I think they're facing a different dichotomy when it comes to that. I think all students are facing just the uphill battle of not being able to receive quality education throughout the past year and a half for that. Because the world of education wasn't ready for it. When you think about African-American students or Latino students, they're often, even more underserved. And so I think that's why I said it's that achievement canyon more than it is a gap anymore. And so I think as schools open back up, especially with all the social justice things that have been happening, African-American students are facing where do they stand even more?
Yeah.
And how do they exercise their voice in the appropriate manner? And how do they find people who will advocate with them and for them?
Okay. With the impact of the pandemic, learning virtually, do you think students lost a lot of educational data for this year? In other words, a lot of students, I know here, a lot of students learning virtual, they seem not to have advanced as much. Do you find that, or is that just some cases?
I think overall, yes. When I look at my current schools that I serve, we're a virtual school, so this wasn't something new for us. I will tell you, as an educator, as an educator, what we thought we were doing was virtual school really isn't virtual school. Bringing kids online for a couple hours in Zoom is not virtual school. Equate virtual school to online learning if you're in an online college program, how you're watching, it's a full day thing instead of these couple hours here, couple hours there. Our online school that I currently serve at is fully an online school. So everything's there. So when I think about our kids, our graduation wasn't pushed back. Everything was able to still happen within the confines of the school year. But for other kids, yes, it's huge. The impact is, it's daunting. 2 hours of working with your teacher is nothing like being in school all day with your teacher.
Right.
The ability to connect. I remember trying to walk teachers through how to set up Zoom accounts and, trying to get them to communicate with each other, or when the kid freezes, or just those different things. So I believe there's always a lot of stimuli when you're in a school setting, but it's kind of more school stimuli. Like, you're going to hear somebody in the hallway. But when our kids were at home and our teachers were at home, it created a totally different level of stimulus, and it created other problems that we didn't anticipate within the education world, especially for our students. They're coming back, and I want to add this piece. It's also the social emotional part that they're facing, right? So that's the part that, as a parent, I'm worried about our own kids. Like, how are they going to go back and socialize and interact with people? Because for some people, kids have been away from each other for years, for over a whole year before they've interacted with another kid. So that's going to create a different dynamic when the school year starts, because I believe our kids are going to be more pulled to themselves than they are, physically going and speaking with someone.
In your bio, you mentioned aspects of bullying and different things like that. With the kids getting back on campus, do you think that you're going to have a problem with that? Do you think kids are more aggressive, like adults seem to be more aggressive with the pandemic?
I will always say that what I expected out of any school that I've led, it comes from the leadership of the school to the teachers to the kids. And so it's going to be, our kids are coming back with pent up aggression. We just have to recognize that they're going to have anxiety, not just aggression, but they have anxiety about coming back. There are some kids, when I was at our brick and mortar school before I transitioned, I had kids in my office having panic attacks about being at school wearing the mask all day.
Yeah.
7th grade students who are having panic attacks. So I think when you factor all of those things in, I think the biggest thing that we as educators need to do is those first couple of days, just allow for people to transition and get back. And it's going to take more than a couple of days. But I say it starts with the leadership, because leaders have to understand and be in tune with their teachers so that the teachers are able to be comfortable, because kids pick on the vibes that the teachers are putting on. So it's critical for leaders to support their teachers and provide that support and that safe environment for them to go back taking academic risks before we even begin to think that our kids are going to come back taking those risks.
Good point. Good point. I don't know if Arizona is dealing with this, but many states are dealing with critical race theory being taught in their schools. Have you guys been impacted by it? And if so, do you have any thoughts on it? You ever been asked that one?
I had a feeling that one was coming, because our governor just passed a law yesterday about critical race theory.
Okay.
He didn't necessarily speak directly to critical race theory, but the legislation that he put in place, I believe it spoke to the idea, I read it earlier today, that it spoke to the idea that nothing should be taught to make one race or ethnicity feel bad about historical events. Arizona is shifting immensely. We love those Californians who are moving over here to Arizona and changing the landscape of the state, to stay politically prudent there, if you would. But it's, I've never been one to look at schools to give our kids everything, right? So, growing up, how many times did we, when it was Black History Month, it was Dr. King, Harriet Tubman, very little about Malcolm X, those kind of things. So one of the things that we've shifted in our home, thanks to my beautiful queen, is every month our 2 teenagers, they have to give a Black History report. Oh. And it's not on the typical people. My wife created this rubric for the kids. There's a format. There's this list of people that they have to pick, and they have to present to us every month. The last Sunday of every month, they present. They pick their person. They research it. They present it. And then they tell us the impact that person's had on our culture and on them as a Black American, as an African American. So the critical race theory, I mean, it's 6 in one, a half dozen the other, but the problem is this generation of student, you're not going to be able to stop them from talking.
That's it.
They've seen too much. They've witnessed too much, and they have too much easily accessible to them via technology to honestly shut them up. So again, to me, those conversations come back to leadership. You have to have those courageous conversations with your teachers. You need to talk about the elephant in the room. If you have race issues within your own school, you need to talk about, why are we suspending or referring more African-American boys? And those are the things that have to happen. But our students are going to force the issue. I'm excited to see it because they know they have a voice, and they want their voice to be heard.
You kind of touched on something, and I found it being problematic here. Why is it, and it probably doesn't happen in your school because you're leadership and you're a man of color, but why is it that typically Black boys are suspended at a higher rate and disciplined more harsher than other students?
Yeah, there was a series of books that I've read throughout my career about Dr. Kunwanzu Kunjufu, and it talks about just that very fact. The problem is a lot of teachers relate to students that remind them of themselves, right? And so there's plenty of studies out there, the Blue Eyes study. There's different things out there, looking at the different ethnicity of baby dolls. I think the challenge is it's not going anywhere. I mean, it's gotten better. However, the problem is teachers don't want to connect with kids.
True.
And everything that I've ever led, and from a leadership perspective, has been, it's all about relationships, right? As an African-American man, yes, I connect with African-American students, but I connect with my Caucasian students, my Hispanic students. It doesn't matter because I have a heart to serve the kids. And so it's a unique perspective because oftentimes they're perceived as doing something more egregious than a peer would be doing. And so this research that's out there, that we have a bias sometimes when we look at the behavior of kids.
It's true.
And that bias, again, going back to everything I believe with schools, it starts with leadership. The leaders that are allowing the referrals. When I took over Brookview, referrals were out the roof. And Greg and I made an intent purpose to create a climate and educate our staff as well as our students about being culturally responsive and culturally sensitive and recognizing things. I tell teachers all the time, listen, you have that African American boy in class, he's gonna back channel. Because he's used to, in the church, what do? Pastor, can I get an amen? Amen. He's showing you, or they're showing you that they're engaged with what you're saying by talking. But many perceive it as they're talking back. They're disrupting class.
Right.
It's not that. You just have to understand and connect with that kid so you know what to do. It's not about teaching our kids to ignore their culture, but there's also teaching them, here's how we're going to interact in this space. And if they respect you and they value that they really believe that you love them and care for them, they'll jump through hoops for you. But kids, I say it all the time, kids are probably the most perceptive people on this earth. I've had kids come tell me, like, Mr. Woods, they don't like me and this is why. And I couldn't straight up tell them, like, I agree with you. They are very perceptive. And, I think it was Maya Angelou said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is the essence of education. It don't matter where you're serving. I believe kids from affluent communities deserve the best educators. Rita Pearson, a great educator I follow, her TED Talks, she passed away some years ago, but she said every kid deserves a champion. So it doesn't matter where the kid is, but, you have to want to connect with the kids. You have to want to understand that little Black boy's culture and where he's coming from. I mean, I had teachers get mad at me and go to the union because I wouldn't suspend a kid because they stole an extra breakfast. Well, let's examine why they stole the breakfast. I think the baby's hungry.
Oh, wow.
So instead of us throwing away that food, let's make sure we give that food to that kid. Because listen, my wife and my friends will tell you, when I'm hungry, I'm not the most pleasant person to be around. Hangry is a real thing. So, I mean, it's those differences, educating people along the way to just, we're so quick to throw everything out. African-American boys are suspended the most, referred the most, and referred to special education the most.
Yeah.
And it's really, to me, that's a pandemic within our education scene and education world. But it stems from people not trying to connect with them or get to know them.
Your bio also mentioned a stint in special ed. Tell me something about your experience with special education.
So I have loved our students with special needs for as long as I can remember, because to me that's even a more underserved population of students, right? And so I'm all about being the voice of the voiceless. And our special education population, those students and their families, oftentimes I've seen it happen where they get railroaded. I've sat in case conferences with parents, and I tell them, like, let me walk you. You got a lot of people with a lot of letters and degrees around their name, but let's talk about what's really happening here. Do you understand? Do you understand the power this IEP gives you? And I used to tell parents all the time, let's say you hit the lotto and you move to Hawaii. This piece of paper that we're all agreeing to and signing today is still valuable there. It's still valid. And so my time in special education, it's always there. It doesn't leave. Because any situation that I'm in, when it's involving our students with special needs or meeting those students where they are, it's centered around providing support and education for them and their families. Because so often, it's our children get tagged with special education, and then parents think that that's a lifetime sentence. It isn't, and it's not a magic wand either. But let's talk about what's really happening when your child has been qualified as a student receiving special education services, and what are your rights? And as that kid gets older, what are that student's rights? Those rights don't leave when they go to college. So part of me, it's teaching them how to have that voice, that advocacy for themselves, but as well as the parents. I've had poor parents in my office plenty of times early on, like, I need you to understand, because they maybe they went to the doctor, and the doctor, in some cases, Janice, they give the parent a prescription for an IEP. I don't know how a doctor can write a prescription for an IEP, because that's not possible, but having that conversation with that parent help them understand what the process looks like and what are their rights. So yeah, it's something that's, again, it's an underserved population that has always had my heart.
Wow, impressive. How do you motivate students who don't want to be there? Like students that sit in class and they don't want to be there. How do you motivate them?
You have to connect. And I know it sounds overrated, but one simple thing I did when I was a dean of students because I had some frequent flyers, if you would, some kids that always seem to find their way to my office. A simple strategy I learned called 2x10, 2 minutes a day, 10 days in a row. And it's all about connecting relationships. So I remember those kids who were my heavy hitters, who spent a lot of time with me, who didn't want to be in school. I was at their bus when they got off the bus. Man, did you see the game last night? My kids that were sports people, my kids that were athletes, my kids who were into Harry Potter or something else, like just having that conversation with them. That's how you motivate them. But it also starts with, again, I go back to leadership, making sure that the teachers that are in front of the kids want to be there. Because I don't care how motivated or unmotivated kid is, if they walk into a teacher's classroom that is, the Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 if that's all they're hearing, that kid's going to tune out. But it really starts with just connecting and talking to the kid. Not talking at the kid or the child, but talking to the kid. And when you take peak interest in what they like, then they start coming to you having conversations. Mr. Woods, did you see? I did see it. Oh. And then, so it's going out of your way to meet them at their point, because there's baggage there. And I firmly believe every kid wants to learn. They've had such bad experience with so many educators, sadly, at points that they're tuned out because they're worried. Are you the same? Are you like the last teacher that's going to leave me? Are you going to write me up, kick me out? I really don't know how to read. So when you ask me to read something out loud, I'm going to act out. But if you really got to know me and talk to me and worked with me, you recognize that that's why I'm struggling. So now don't call on me when you ask somebody to read out loud. So again, I think it all comes back to the relationship with the kid.
Someone said that you had a big personality. I wish you would have stayed up there because it was so accurate.
There it is.
He has a big personality. He connects with the kids. I agree with that. Is that your wife, Deshelle?
That's my wife. There she is. That's her tagline.
Is she a teacher too?
No, we can't have two teachers in the house. No.
No, you said she give assignments every Sunday. I thought she's an
she's just a mama. She was a very studious person herself, and she's an amazing student. But yeah, she's a teacher in the home. And I always tell people, people ask me, who's your first teacher? I pray that our kids, when they get to ask that question one day, they say their first teacher was their mom and their dad. So
that's right.
She defines me as a walking exclamation mark.
What plans do you have? It sounds like you probably need to inject technology, not only with the students, they're probably pretty advanced because kids now seem to be, but with your staff. You said something about showing your teachers how to use Zoom?
Yeah. I mean, when I opened my school here, I hired great teachers for in-person instruction, but they were not equipped to teach online because it's night and day. So when you're looking at the education profession, what I hope to see at universities is more of this experience, teaching teachers how to interact, how to have an engaging lesson on a camera, how to, it's one thing when you're in a classroom and you can use proximity to regulate undesirable behavior, but how do you manage the chat room? So it's those different things that can still cause a classroom disruption that teachers need to be well versed in, but they also have to understand it's the energy that you bring, right? From the moment you turn on the camera, like what kind of energy are you bringing to the room and how prepared are you? And so that to me is one of the biggest things that we have, as we're looking at schools opening up hybrid models or, district schools that are now opening up online schools, engagement looks different in the virtual world. Mm-hmm. So how do you make that happen? And again, how do you connect with that kid? And that is going to be critical because so much is being done. It's no longer just grading the papers the old fashioned way with all the papers on the floor and you watching your favorite. Now it's electronic. How do you, and you don't have a teacher who understands how to use Excel or create formulas within Excel to help those processes. It's very daunting.
I think it's much more challenging for them.
Yeah, very much so.
Do you have an arts program in your school? I'm just curious.
We do. We have fine arts program. This year we're going to have digital photography for our students. In one of our schools we have graphic design. We offer gaming to the students because those are now scholarships. I think that's where the path my son wants to go down potentially, and that's okay. Go forward. But yeah, we offer all the arts. We have physical education, music, art, and to our students as well.
Physical education, that's just about out in schools here. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. How do you modify your teaching to help students who are struggling with the subject or the learning level, like those coming back that should be at a certain learning level and they're a little below it? Are you guys planning on how you're going to handle that when they come back?
Absolutely. So we know what standards they need to have on grade level, but we have to dig back. We have to start to figure out a baseline of where the kids are. So, we've already started talking to our teachers about stair-stepping their lesson plans. You may be a 5th grade teacher, but you may be teaching 4th grade standards when we get back. You may be dipping back to some 3rd grade standards because you can't teach that 5th grade standard that builds on the 4th grade and 3rd grade standard. And so that process of closing that gap, that is a part of those first couple of weeks of school is figuring out where our kids are because that has to determine where we're going to go.
Okay. How would you approach a student who refuses to participate or one of those kids who miss school all the time, who never comes to school?
Well, it depends. I've had those situations, and I was the principal that was showing up at your door. I'm knocking on the door. I'm doing a home visit. I'm coming to talk to you. I'm coming to talk to mama because mama may not know that mama probably maybe going to work before you supposed to leave for school and you ain't coming, and you deleting the voicemails before they get. I don't know what the situation is, but I'm not going to let you not be engaged. I am coming to meet you where you are. I mean, when I was a principal, there were kids that the parents like Mr. Woods, they refused to come. I'm on my way. You help me get them in the car. We'll get them to school. They're going to be at school. So it's connected on whatever level. That kid that's shutting down, I can think back to times where kids had a meltdown, ran out of class. He's angry in the hallway. I just sit down beside the kid. We talk. Let's just talk. You want to scream? I've had kids come to my office, scream. Let's get it out. I've had a rough day too. I'm going to scream with you. And we're gonna scare the front office. So let's go tell them first so they don't be alarmed. And then it's all about kind of de-escalating that kid, and oftentimes inadvertently. So, I tell them, let's go tell the front office we're gonna scream. They're gonna hear some loud screams, but everything's okay. And by the time we scream, and I make sure I go louder than them, they end up looking at me like, "What's wrong with him?"
But he went a little cray-cray.
Went a little cray-cray. But now the ice is broken.
Right.
So now let's talk about what's really going on. Okay. And, how can we work through it? Because oftentimes educators, I believe the most powerful words an educator can give to a kid is "I'm sorry" when we mess up, instead of just thinking that we're always right. And so when we do make that mistake, apologizing to that kid, but helping that kid understand what you have to say in your education is valuable. You have some say-so in this. This just isn't the, Mr. Woods show. And I think that's one of the things that helped me when I was a teacher is my kids knew that they had value in my class. They knew I was in charge, but they knew that this was our space. You know, something simple that I used to do when kids would walk in my room, they had to give me a high five or a hug.
Oh.
A handshake or a hug. High fives are only after we left. And I would tell them, I could see it on their face. I'm like, leave that at the door. You mad at them, don't bring that in here. Let's come in and let's do what we need to do. So again, it goes back for me, it's to connecting with the kid. That kid that's choosing not to be involved, there's a reason. And you need to figure out what is that reason and address that reason to make that kid feel safe in your space.
What would you tell someone in undergrad who's about to graduate, who wants to be a teacher, but kind of thinking about teaching, but maybe not? What would you tell them to encourage them to be an educator? Just wondering.
I would tell them, one, you're not going to get rich in this profession. All right. So financially, you're not going to get rich, but in experiences and memories, you will. And I would also tell them, start saving for retirement immediately, but also, more importantly, never forget why you do this work. You know, I have to remind teachers, I'm not here to serve teachers. One of the things that when I took over my first school, and I've said it everywhere I've gone, I will always do what's in the best interest of the students that I serve. Sometimes you'll love me for it. Sometimes you'll hate me for it. But I'll sleep at night knowing I did what was best for the kids that we serve. And that's what I would tell them. Never forget why we got into this work. Because just like with any other profession, there's a lot of red tape, paperwork, things that happen that can frustrate you. But if you get into this work to serve kids and give them hope and give them something bigger and better than they ever dreamed, you're a winner. You've done your part. You know, that's what Mr. West told me when I was a freshman in high school. You know, he told me if I touch one kid, I've done my part. If I touch more, that's just a blessing.
Wow. And this is going to be one of the last questions. And I know typically, you know, when you work 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are, you don't want people calling you at home. But I tend to think I know the answer to this. If any of your kids or any of your parents or anybody at the school, do they call you at home after hours?
Yes.
I knew it.
Yes. Now, I will tell them there's one day that I've always had off limits, and that was Saturday. Because I'm like, I deserve to be a husband and a father, and typically Sunday. But during the week, absolutely. And it's still some teachers that I had years ago that still reach out and ask questions, or parents will connect on Facebook and say, hey, Mr. Woods. But yeah, people have look at my wife. People have my cell phone number. Yeah. People have my I'm known to when I was a principal, I give out my personal cell phone number. And if a parent ever showed up at the school, I didn't push them off. I didn't hide behind secretaries, because if it took time out of their day, it was important enough for them, I need to make sure I make time for them. So yes, but as I've grown, I hope my wife can chime in that I've gotten better at it.
Okay. What's your wife's name?
Deshelle.
Deshelle, has he gotten better? If you could just respond. I know we should have brought you on. Has he gotten any better? Does he get just as many calls as he used to from day one? He definitely has a passion for children and their education. Great work. That's Mary Anderson. Hey, thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Deshelle, tell me if your husband has gotten much better. Okay, so you're trying to get a little bit balanced. And that makes me want to thank you doubly, because you mentioned that Saturday is a day that is your family day and you don't do anything else. So I really appreciate you being on the show. Come on, I want to see that frame move. It looks like it froze a little bit, but it's a good pose, so that's okay. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. It's a good time if it freezes to freeze now. Thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk on Indie TV, and a special thanks, and I hope you can hear me, to Mr. Woods, particularly coming on today being a Saturday and this is your family day. Thank you for taking out the hour, you and your wife, to be on the show. We'd love to have you back after they do the movie about you. I remember a teacher who was passionate just like you are 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, and they did a movie about him, and I expect them to do the same with you. So I expect to see the show about Mr. Woods. Oh, did we lose him? Anyway, I expect to see a show about Mr. Woods, so I want to really thank you. Your journey has been an inspiration, and if you can hear me, and I hope you can, continue with that journey and keep pouring into others. I want to thank the listening audience too, and I won't be here next week, but I'll be back here on the 24th. I'll be out of town next week. The 24th, we have a conversation with Miss Yanni, and you guys are going to love that also. She is very exciting, and that'll be on the 24th. So I'm signing off from Let's Talk, everyone. Have a blessed week and tune in on the 24th. And always tell your friends and share. Be blessed.
Camped out at home for COVID? Join us, Indie TV, where you will see the talk shows, movies, drama, action, and comedy. Be the first and see it first. Sign up now for free at Indie TV.